you so much for coming out. I'm really excited to have this opportunity to speak with you all. And you've been hearing us throughout the weekend talk about yoga votes. I'm going to get to that in a moment, but I really want to take a few moments first to talk a little bit about off the mat and what we're doing and how this is going in the direction that it's going, and to also take time to take any questions from you all. But off the mat into the world was my hope in looking at the yoga community. I've been doing yoga since I was 19, and I've been teaching for 17 years, and I've been a really big part of this community and have watched it evolve in so many ways over the years. I can't believe how it is today compared to how it was back in the 80s when I first started doing this. And I can't help but feel personally that there's a reason I'm doing yoga, and there's a reason that I've been called to this particular path, because it doesn't quite make sense, just in terms of my own upbringing and my culture. Yet the moment I walked into a yoga room, it's not like I understood the language. It's like I understood every 8th word, and I knew I shouldn't. The language was so unfamiliar, yet it was speaking to something in my soul, and I wanted more and more and more. And it felt very karmic to me to be in that environment, because it both excited me and freaked me out. The teachers would trigger me, the environment would trigger me, and I knew it was going to change my life, and it did. And I imagine it changed many of your lives as well. And every time I would want to get off the path, something would kind of drag me back into the experience, and finally I just surrendered and realized I think there might be something bigger going on here. And I think I might be being asked to be a part of whatever this bigger thing is. And it doesn't mean my role is going to be in any way super dramatic, glamorous, or even significant. But I think there's something I'm supposed to do to be a part of perhaps a conversation that promotes not just health and wellness, but change on a much deeper level. And when I look at the evolution of the yoga community, it's the same thing. I see it getting bigger and more diverse, and very simple people are doing extraordinary things. And I can't help but feel slightly, both again, freaked out and awe-inspired by the potential that this community has to really make a difference in this world, not only on an emotional, psychological level, but really on a very practical level. And this is really what I want to talk about a little bit today. There's 20 million people in the United States doing yoga. This is an altruistic community, an educated community, a community that, generally speaking, pays their taxes and votes. And I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if we could align ourselves as a collective, rather than being disenfranchised from the different styles of yogis. You got the Ashtangis here, the ones who are into Iyengar, and the Kundalinis over there, the Vinyasa folk in this direction. That none of that matters. What would happen if we could collect the energy that holds a singular intention, and that intention being we are one, and find a way to mobilize and put either our energy, our time, our money, or perhaps even our vote in a way that helps to change policy, that helps to galvanize, that shifts consciousness, that aids or lends aid or support. Miracles could happen, I have no doubt in my mind. Not even miracles, practical effort can happen that can inevitably create change. There's no miracle to that, it's just practical. And when you look at how much money is in this community, how do we grab it somehow and then use it in a way that can be really effective? And so I really understood that I had a platform, and I got that. And again, karmically, I don't know why. It never made any sense to me why I got the attention that I got from the get-go when I started teaching yoga. Literally within, I was teaching yoga probably 4 months, and I got asked to speak on the Today Show with Matt Lauer. And I was up all night long thinking, what is yoga? What is yoga? Because I thought for sure that's what he was going to ask me. He didn't. And if you see my face on that very first interview, he asked me a question. I have no idea what it was, because it wasn't what I thought. My eyes are like this big, thinking, oh my God, I don't know where this is going. And it went fine, except I had my hand on his butt the entire time, and still not quite sure how that happened either. But nonetheless, I got at a very early on in my career, I realized that I was going to have opportunities to speak about yoga publicly and to also cross into a more mainstream environment. And why that happens, I don't know. All I know is it was happening. So instead of getting afraid of it or intimidated by it, I decided to get educated and skilled to some capacity so that I can prepare myself, so that I can go into these environments with a little bit more confidence and try to bridge that gap, excuse me, between maybe a perception of yoga and the way that the mainstream was holding that yoga, and to be able to evolve that perception a little bit to make it more inclusive. And so that seemed to be my particular destiny. And I also was never very comfortable with a lot of attention coming on to me. I personally, I know I'm not that, me personally, I'm not that interesting of a person, but the things that I'm interested in are interesting. And I wanted to be able to deflect the attention off of me and put it onto things that were actually could have some consequence in this world. And that seems to be my particular offering in the yoga community, is to raise the awareness, is to bridge the gap between yoga and the mainstream, and to create opportunities for people like you to step into leadership and to also make a difference. I, as one person, have a certain amount of power, but we as a collective, we are a force to be reckoned with. And I have every interest in my own heart in being able to, in whatever way I can, to mobilize that particular force. So thus was created Off the Mat Into the World. And Off the Mat Into the World is a training program that we have. It's one of many things, but it bridges the gap between yoga and activism. And it helps to inspire and train people to bring the qualities of yoga into their outreach work so that it can be more sustainable, and so that it can come from a place not from trauma or wounds or separation, which is the true evil that exists within this world, this sense of otherness. Yogis don't believe in otherness. We believe in interdependency. We believe that everything is connected. So when you look at the world and the way that it exists today, we can recognize that the conflicts only exist because there's power over. And when there's power over, there has to be power under. It's this division that creates so much conflict. As yogis, we're trying to do the work on ourselves so that we can see that the light and the dark that exists within the world exists within, and if we can heal it within ourselves, we can level that playing field so that we can live more compassionate, more conscious, more unified lives. And it's challenging. We get triggered. Our egos get ignited. We need to be right, therefore someone else has to be wrong. We've got our own limited beliefs and our own dogmas, and it's hard to stand in truth without wanting to knock someone down. So what Off the Mat Into the World does is try to work towards providing tools to allow us the skill to process some of our own bigger feelings, expectations, and intentions, so that when we're in conflict, we're able to engage in conflict without perpetuating separation. We're able to breathe and stay in our body and listen differently. It's this relationship that creates space for conversation. And so over the years, Off the Mat Into the World, besides training leaders, like we're in the business of really leadership. We want to see people out in their own communities doing different projects related to perhaps the environment, healthcare, education, domestic violence issues. It wouldn't matter to us. It's what's passionate to you. But how do you do it in a way that allows for inclusivity and sustainability? And this is the work that we do ourselves. And so as an organization, we wanted to be able to model how to effectively do outreach, how to deal with some of the issues that come up, how to fundraise, how to awareness build, and reflect back that model. And so we created what's called the Save a Challenge, and we are close to raising $3 million in just the last few years. The Save a Challenge is this. Well, I got the camera. Everyone can know about this. Each year we focus on a different developing country. The first year was Cambodia, then Uganda, then South Africa. We got back from Haiti in February. This year we're focusing on India and sex trafficking. We go out into these countries, we vet different grassroots organizations, we find out what the needs of the community are, and then they propose to us certain projects that they want to do to fulfill those needs. We agree to it or negotiate with them what we can afford and what we can't. And then we go out to the community and say, okay, now you. Go out to your community, raise $20,000, raise awareness, talk about some of these issues, talk about some of these programs that are happening. And if you can raise that $20,000, you get to come with me for 2 weeks to whatever country it is that we're focusing on and actually see where the money is being spent. If you can't raise the money, it doesn't matter. It all goes into one big pot. And so we have, over the years, we've built an eco-birthing center and a 7-room schoolhouse in Uganda, a sustainable bakery and a halfway house in South Africa. We've done microfinancing and microloans, which is a model that I really love a lot, in Haiti, as well as convert shipping containers into classrooms and dorms for a university that was felled, as well as in the earthquake, as well as providing solar paneling, and also planting 1,000 trees because of the clear cutting that happens, or the deforestation that happens so dramatically throughout Haiti. Those are some of the examples of the projects that we do. And this is also very sustainable. We don't have to take any grants from the government. That means that we don't have to answer to anybody in regards to that. And we also do projects here in the United States called the Empowered Youth Initiative, which focuses on marginalized youth. We've been focusing on Los Angeles. This year coming up, we're going to be going into Oakland, also focusing on sex trafficking, although in the past we've been doing a lot of work with gangs. So as you can see, we have a lot of projects, and it's been very effective over the last few years. And we have also helped to support and birth a variety of other projects like yoga and 12-step recovery curriculum. We're working on the yoga and the LGBT community curriculum. Urban gangsters, the embodied love movement, trying to really bring people who are out in their lives doing the work, pulling them up and out and supporting them in their own leadership. And so again, we really see that if we can support small communities throughout the United States to step into leadership and engage in a conversation of transformation, we can raise an enormous amount of money and an enormous amount of awareness. Thus comes full circle to the project that we're doing now, which is Yoga Votes. And we're really excited by this. And to me, this makes perfect sense. And it's a conversation that is worthy of the yoga community, although at the same time, it is also worthy of dialogue and even controversy. For me personally, there is no separation between yoga and politics. As a citizen here of the United States who enjoys the privileges that we get when people are making decisions on our behalf in regards to healthcare, military, environment, education, I want to make sure that I have a say who these people are, both on a local level as well as on a national level. And I recognize that very often we feel powerless, and so we disengage from that process. But even that disengagement creates separation. We don't know necessarily what happens if we do engage, but we know what happens if we don't. What happens if we don't is that we lose our voice in this process. We allow those around us who have a stronger, maybe more forceful voice to take charge. And now that might happen anyway. It doesn't matter. At least we participate in the process, and a process that each and every one of us in this room are very blessed to be a part of. When you look around the world today and you see how much oppression there is and how much lack of opportunity and how people would kill to be able to vote if they had that opportunity. And too often, we turn our back on that particular privilege. And what we're trying to do is, by creating Yoga Votes, it's a nonpartisan effort. And this is something that we really need to get across. We are not telling you who to vote for. It's really none of our business who you vote for. Me, Seane Corn, I have my own particular opinions. I will vote in one way over another way, perhaps. Will I discuss that with any of you? Probably not, because it's none of your business. What's important, though, is that we engage. What my hope is, though, is that as a yoga community, we will look at the values of yoga. What do we stand for as a community? Do we stand for compassion? Do we stand for interdependency? Do we stand for connection? Do we stand for freedom? Do we stand for peace? And then look at our candidates and see which of our candidates comes as close as possible to meeting some of those ideals, and perhaps are some of their policies in alignment. And if that's the case, maybe that's the candidate that we choose. Again, both on a local level, which is going to be way more impactful for many of us in this room, as well as on a national level. And so we want to start this conversation and really encourage people to start bringing this awareness into our own community and see what happens if we can increase the voter turnout in this year's election. Perhaps instead of being looked at as a yoga community, we can be looked at as a constituency. Can you imagine if suddenly our politicians were looking at us and modifying some of their policies to suit the collective needs of this community? Change isn't just possible, it's inevitable. And I know that I want to be a part of introducing this opportunity for all of us, but asking you all to run with it. This is not an off-the-mat effort that's staying very inclusive to us. We want you to have this information, go back to your community, teach yoga classes where you can have a 20-minute dialogue afterwards about why politics, do you care about politics, why should we be involved? And also hear from the people who just don't believe at all that there should be a connection between yoga and politics. There's a valuable conversation within that as well. And even though I don't agree, I want to hear that conversation. I want to hear from the yogis that are involved in the Tea Party, or who are Republicans, or who are progressives and liberals, and understand why. And see if we can find a way for the mainstream to recognize that we're not just a bunch of woo-hoo, fluffy, granola-eating, tree-hugging, although I might be kind of that, but I also vote. And I also have a very strong and very empowered voice. And so I want to be recognized within the mainstream world that I can live in both places at the same time, and that my opinion matters, and that your opinion matters. And so this is what Yoga Votes is all about. And we really want to encourage you to get involved. And afterwards, there's going to be an opportunity. Actually, I can do this right now. If one of the things that we just launched is something that's our website, which is www.yogavotes.org. And if you go to yogavotes.org, you can pledge to vote. Again, we're not asking who you're voting for. We want to collect the data and find out how many people in the yoga community are actually doing this. We would love to see that there are 1 million people who come onto the site, 2 million, 20 million, and that are committing to voting. So if you want to do it, you can do it right now, actually. Actually, not right now, because you can't turn your phone on. But if you text to vote, it's 56512, and then put vote into the little message, it'll immediately go to our web, and we'll be able to collect that data. So again, 56512, pledge to vote, or you can go to our site and also click on pledge to vote, and we can gather that data. You can also find out about the different workshops and events that we're going to be doing leading up to the 2012 election, and other ways to get involved. The other thing that we're doing that I'm excited to be able to announce, because it's showing, my hope is that it's showing you how serious we are about moving into these mainstream environments, and also how non-dogmatic we are trying to be about this, regardless of our own personal feelings. We are doing something that's called the Huffington Oasis at the Democratic National Convention and at the Republican National Convention. And it'll be the last week of August and the first week of September. And it's a project that we do with Arianna Huffington from the Huffington Post. And we did it 4 years ago at the Democratic National Convention. We didn't have the resources to do it at the RNC, otherwise we would have. And what it is an alternative lounge that's available from 7 in the morning until midnight. And it'll provide holistic services to the politicians and to the media and to the people that really are making decisions on our behalf. And so between sessions, instead of grabbing a Red Bull and a burger, we want them to come to us to get yoga, meditation, Tai Chi, spa services, organic food, and to be able to unwind, connect, breathe, and hopefully send them back into their sessions feeling a little bit more integrated and a little bit more connected. And we feel like this is a great offering that we can do, and it's on a volunteer basis. So if any of you have any skills and you don't mind sleeping on someone's floor somewhere in Tampa or in Charlotte, you're welcome to let us know, and we'll see if we can get you into it, because we're going to need a lot of bodies. But this is going to be our way of engagement. We're also going to have we're going to be working with the Huffington Post to encourage people like yourself and like me to talk about the diversity in the yoga community and the intersection between yoga and politics. And we're inviting people who have different political bents and asking them to write about their feelings. And we're going to post it so really that the yoga community will know how diverse we are, but also the mainstream world can understand how serious we are about this. And hopefully they'll be willing to, when I say they, I'm talking more in terms of our politicians, will be more willing to serve the needs of this community, and hopefully we can really impact this. This is not an effort that is just ending in 2012. This is going to be an ongoing effort that we're just launching now. And we intend to keep this conversation alive, no matter how controversial it is, because we stand in the understanding that we are all one and we all have a responsibility to serve this ideal. And we serve it through finding our voice and through engagement, and by being, like I said, a voice for the voiceless, and by exercising all of our rights and participating, especially when it comes to our environment, our healthcare, and the lives of our sons and our daughters, and of our global family, and all the other issues that impact each and every one of us as citizens, not only of the United States, but citizens of this planet. And so that's what we're doing now. That's my new effort, our new effort, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to introduce this to you. And I'm pretty sure I covered everything. Carrie, am I cool? Carrie's my boss. She'll give me a thumbs up, Carrie. Thank you. All right, so with that, what I'm hoping is that you'll not only go to yogavotes.org, but I'll go to Off the Mat into the world and see some of the other projects that we have happening in the United States and overseas. The India project is happening now. We're anticipating, this is going to be our biggest project yet. We're anticipating that we're going to raise anywhere between $750,000 and $1.2 million on this project, and we're really excited by it. And we don't know what we're going to do next year, but we're thinking Ecuador and the Brazilian rainforest, but I don't know that yet, but maybe. So if you guys have any ideas about where you want to go and what you want to see and the relationships you want to create and the efforts that we should be focusing on, let me know, because I'm really interested in what you're interested in. All right, so I think I said my piece. Am I cool with that? And what I'd like to do now, if any of you have any questions or thoughts, I'll try to the best of my ability to answer it, and or perspectives of your own. I'm cool with that too.
Nice talk.
Thank you.
Have you done any work with Andrew Harvey or studied sacred activism? And
of course.
Yeah,
Andrew's actually a very dear friend.
It's amazing.
And I highly recommend his book. It is
The Heart Chakra. And it's Sacred Activism?
Yes, Sacred Activism is an amazing book, and it's an incredible resource. It's one that I have gone back to again and again and again, especially when I need inspiration, which is often. When I start to feel like that this is hopeless and I feel too inadequate in my role as a little bitty human being in this world, that is a book that inspires me deeply.
And as he always says, he ties into the divine for his strength. So, and he's very funny.
Yes,
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the work you're doing. I have a international development background and have worked abroad, and I'm just wondering if you thought and have considered and put effort into the sustainability, sorry, I have allergies right now, the sustainability of your development projects and like perhaps the consequences.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is dialogue that we have all the time. The reason that we pick grassroots organizations in the countries that we focus on, they're organizations that already have a track record and a future. The sustainability is really in their hands. We don't take on projects that are overwhelming to the organization. We usually let them give us their wish list, and then we get a little bit more practical based on what they've already created in the past. And so sustainability is very, very important to us. And it's the same thing in going in there and looking at what are the needs of the community, rather than going and saying, we want a school and we're going to call it Off the Mat into the world. They might actually say, actually, we need microfinancing and loans. We want to create an empowered opportunity for the people in our community. That's really what we need. It's like, well, all right, then that's what we'll fund. And we have a team that we have to answer to that vets everything. And so it's not just, you know, a couple of us yogis doing this. There's a whole entire, there's nine people within the organization, but there's also an umbrella of, that's our 501c3, our parent organization, that holds us accountable for everything. And so we're very, very conscientious about that. And what we also do is there's an ambassador program. So for example, and they might even be in this room, I think there is one woman here, maybe two, that every time we go into a country and bring a group in, we elect an ambassador who then brings a group in the next year at a much smaller scale, but there's still money being donated to those organizations to check up on the projects, to meet, to find out what's going on. Is there any issues that are coming up that we need to know about? So we try to keep groups coming in even after we off the mat might not, me, meaning, and Suzanne, my partner in Off the Mat into the World on the Save It Challenges, we might not go back to Uganda, for example. But we do have ambassadors that will, that represent us, and then they check back in. So sustainability is very, very important, and we try not to bite off more than we can chew. We try to lowball, in a sense, of what we're going to promise, because we never know how much money we're going to end up making. So we don't want to promise too big and then not have the money. So we try to lowball it, but we're required by law to have to spend the money that we raise in that country. So that's really wonderful, because then we get to I guess, earmark that and save it and be able to distribute more money at other times to those very same organizations. So these are some of the things that we think about. Sustainability is incredibly important, and it's one of the things that needs to be addressed. And as we raise more and more money, which we intend to, we imagine that's going to be a bigger issue. So it's we will continue to align ourselves with people who are much smarter and much more experienced, perhaps even yourself, to help to guide us and to provide us the information so that we continue doing this correctly. And I knock on wood, because so far we've got a fairly good track record. And so I say that with like, I'll knock on Ganesh. Yeah, so thank you for asking that question. Any other questions?
You said you were starting to get involved with gangs or looking to work with them. My mom is from Guatemala, and they have a very bad problem with these gangs. And I was just wondering, like, one, like, how are you going into it? And the first thing I could, like, you know, talk to her about these things, and are they even welcoming? Like, I mean, that must be very difficult.
Again, it's not like we're just going out into the hood and being like, hey, Crips, do some yoga. That would be completely inappropriate. You go into the environment working with leaders that are already within that environment that is standing into world, and meaning like in Los Angeles, for example, there's an amazing man named Aquila who's very famous for creating the peace treaty between the Bloods and the Crips 20 years ago. And he was a gang member himself, hardcore. And him and a bunch of young gang members decided enough was enough with this. Too many young people were dying. And they didn't want to eradicate the gangs. They loved their gangs. They wanted to eradicate the violence. So they stepped in and created this peace treaty. And in our last project, we aligned ourselves with him to learn more about his work, asked them what they would like, and what they wanted was the money for a mural. They were having this big peace treaty 20-year celebration, and they wanted a mural on the wall in Watts to reflect this. And so we paid for the mural, and it was ex-gang members who came in and painted the murals together, and you can see it online. You can go down to Watts and see it. And it's two hands holding, and there's a dove coming out of it, and it says peace on one side and unity on the other, and it has all the gang's colors in this. And it's pretty remarkable, some of the really effective leadership that's happening, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of experience, but that are also bringing in conversations around spirituality, and those are the leaders that we try to meet with. And so we come in, what resources they need are support, and they need funding. We can help them with funding. What they then give us is access, and their community trusts us a little bit more to be able to engage. And so then we get to kind of play and hang out and talk and connect. That's the most effective way to do it, is to have someone from within the community help to support you in a more mindful way. Otherwise, it's just us imposing what we believe is the ideal way to live a life onto a community that has no interest in our involvement. And that's, there's hierarchy in that. There's certainly privilege in that, power, and it's not appropriate. And so we find the leaders in the community and find out, do you want us? Are you interested in us? And so far we've been really effective, because we're not going in there trying to, we're just going in there to connect and to support them in their own process. And whatever that process is, we're just going to be present to that and not think that it should be any different than what it is. And hopefully be as an example of people who are going to love them no matter what, which is hard. I can't even love myself no matter what. All right, did that answer that, Ray? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your work starting yoga votes. I think it's really inspiring and exciting, especially heading into this election. I was just wondering if you could speak at all to the relative size of this potential yoga constituency versus other key constituencies that we hear of referenced so often in the mainstream media that seem to drive our political discussion.
I think it's an amazing question, and it's not one that I'm yet informed on, but it's funny, that just came up for me last night. There's a woman working within our organization named Jessica. She's hiding out back there somewhere. I'm sure she'll answer questions, and she worked, I probably shouldn't mention where she had worked, but she was very involved politically, and she actually comes to our organization with some real information. She actually knows what she's talking about on a much higher level. I told you, I surround myself with really smart people. And last night she was talking a little bit about these different constituencies and how the different parties target certain environments and how they do, from the people who read outside magazines to moms who have kids in daycare. And yoga was one that I think they danced around a little bit, but they didn't understand really. It seemed like the yoga community didn't care. It was a community wasn't really that invested and that interested, so why go after them? So I don't really know that number yet. But if they're going out people who are reading Outside magazine, I can't imagine that's more than, well, it might be more than 20 million. I have no idea. But it was a conversation that made me think, I want to find out what those numbers are. So it's great that you asked that question, because I don't know. And Jessica, I don't know if you want to throw that out there. If you know, I don't want to put you on the spot. But what is a viable number? What makes a constituency?
I mean, honestly, I think 500,000 people is a significant constituency and a group of people to go after. So, given there are 20 million people practicing yoga, to different levels, to different degrees. I mean, not only does that make us a constituency, that would make us one of the very largest constituencies. I mean, that's up there, with the absolute, critical go-to communities. The Latino community, has slightly larger numbers than the yoga community. And of course, there's, distinct things that separate those communities, but it's absolutely incredibly powerful. And it's also a $6 billion industry, right? And there's a lot of money in this world. So on all of those levels, it's an incredibly valuable constituency to target. And we wanted to, but we couldn't figure out how to do it from the outside, and we needed it to happen from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So there you go. Okay. Any other questions? Any concerns? I like to bring that in as well. I mean, I know I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting with me. But I am, I've heard certainly, people who stand opposite, who just don't believe in that intersection. Is there anyone here who's just like, I don't want politics and my yoga to mix. I'm not interested in that or invested. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I am interested is there anyone in this room that's just like, I'm not sure. No, you're all with me on this one. All right, well, good, I'm glad. And I also understand, and again, I really want to put out there, that within, let's say we become this constituency, within this constituency there's diversity, and there needs to be that diversity. But nonetheless, as yogis, there are certain values that whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a Tea Party or a progressive, it doesn't matter. If we have certain values that are related to some core issues, the candidates, regardless of the party line, are going to start to address those issues and realize that they're going to have to shift some of their own policy in order to get our vote, whether it's a Republican vote or a Democrat vote, it doesn't matter. They're going to have to view the relationship they perhaps have with our citizenship and our environment if they're going to want to woo us onto whatever team perhaps that they are a part of or supporting. Mm-hmm. Is there a question here? Oh, okay. I'll get you and then you.
Hi. It just strikes me when you were talking that the yoga community and the values that you're talking about, Sean, are also values held by people maybe outside the yoga community.
Sure.
So maybe not me, but maybe someone reads Outside magazine, cares deeply about the environment. So something just said, use those values to bridge, because after all, it's about the values and it's about the specifics that you want to bring out and you want to vote for and say yes. So that kind of outreach, so you end up extending your constituency, because even within the yoga community, there are a lot of subgroups. And so there seems to be kind of like a cross-pollination that can happen.
Sure. Well, that's what we're hoping that the blogging on the Huffington Post will do, is that we can, again, by highlighting the different people's different political interests, but showing core value, that it might allow people to identify with those values and realize, like, oh, I believe in that too, and see that there is actually a connection. And this gentleman here.
Yeah, so I just had a question. Basically, you're talking about how there's the kind of the lower power and the higher power. And, obviously with this yoga votes, you're going after the politicians, the leadership. Do you have any plans to try and go for the lesser powers, or the people who don't have a voice? How can we engage them? Because our community is very privileged. We're honored to have the finances to come to Wanderlust and experience this and educate ourselves and learn all about this. But how can we really spread what we're learning here out into the real world and really make these roots into the entire country and the world just stronger and strengthened in number?
Well, first of all, I think I absolutely believe 100% it's already happening. It's like what I said in the very beginning. I'm watching the yoga spirituality awareness communities just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's just sinking its little tendrils everywhere, and it has its own life, which I respect. I just know that as a participant, I have to be a part of that. But it's going to happen with or without me. The other part of that is, with Off the Men into the World, when you do a training with us for the 5-day training, after that, we have a program called Yoga in Action. And Yoga in Action is someone who's done our training. Let's say they come in from all over the country. Now they're going back to, let's say, Minnesota. They go back to Minnesota, they get a 7-week curriculum. We ask them to partner with someone else, preferably someone who's a yoga teacher or a therapist, someone who's kind of done some processing work on themselves. And to invite 8 to 12 people and meet once a week for 3 hours and go through the curriculum. And the curriculum covers on a much smaller, on a much more just a softer level, some of the work that we do in our training. At the end of those 7 weeks, that small group of 8 to 12 people, through consensus, come up with a project to serve their local community. We don't care what the project is. Maybe they're going to go into a shelter. Maybe they're going to do work with domestic violence. But they're going to come together and do a project. They become what's called a circle. And from that circle, now, if you can imagine, we've got, I don't even know what the numbers are, but hundreds of these circles throughout the United States. Those circles have 2 leaders. Those leaders influence their community. We don't influence their community. They don't know me in Minnesota, but they know their teacher. So we're hoping to get thousands of these small circles that are doing social, political, environmental outreach in a variety of ways, so that they can reach into some of these perhaps more niche or marginalized communities that don't have access to yoga or don't have access to aid, and we can help support them. On a bigger scale, like for a perfect example of how we want to be able to utilize these small circles, and again, whether you agree with what I chose to do or not is irrelevant. What's important is understanding the power of both the internet and these small circles. When Occupy New York was happening, 3 weeks in, I decided I want to go out and do a talk and to take a stand, not against the 1%, not for the 99%, but for the 100% getting their crap together and unifying and dialoguing and seeing if there was a way that we can engage in a bigger conversation to support healing. And so I felt it was very important for someone in the yoga community to go out and also support what I believe in fully, which is a freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly. I stand for that 1,000%, obviously. And I was uncomfortable with it. I knew I'd get a lot of slack in the yoga community, but everything in my soul said that I needed to do this. And I needed yogis. I needed people that were going to stand with me in solidarity and in peace. And so we came up with this idea about 36 hours prior to the event, reached out to the circles within New York and the tri-state area, and said, here's what we're doing. We need bodies. Please let your community know. Our leaders reached out to their community, and I had like 500-600 people show up in 36 hours with their yoga mats, standing tall and proud and moving and breathing and laughing and connecting. And it was a very powerful experience, but also a very good example of what can happen in a very short amount of time when we need to mobilize to be able to make a difference, whether it's on a national level or even on a much smaller scale, that we can have this bigger impact. And so to answer that question, that's our small attempt of engagement using our community and their leadership as a way to effectively reach to the places that I can't get to. And how it happens on a bigger scale, that's up to you. You know, I'm busy. My plate's full. I want to know what you want to do, what you're passionate about, and what skills you have, and how we can encourage you to step into a position of leadership. And that might mean right now in your life that you just want to raise your kids so that they get through high school without being completely insane. Like, if that's your service and your goal in this world right now, God bless you. And if we can support you in staying present so that you can be of service to your kids or your family, great. We don't want you anywhere else in the world. But if you're also ready to explore other things, we want to support you in that as well, not better than. So that answer the question a little bit? Okay, great. All right. Any other questions? I think I don't know how much more time they're going to give me. Okay.
I just want to say briefly, I really love what you're doing, and it makes so much sense. There are just millions of people who feel this way, and I think so many people have given up on their true ideals because the people with the money might feel the opposite way and seem to have so much more power. So I love this. It's really, really logical and sensical and loving. Can you get the curriculum from your website? I'm thinking of the yoga teachers around Portsmouth, New Hampshire would so embrace
You
this.
have to do a training first before you can get the curriculum. We have to be able to monitor, like, who's going out there and giving out this information.
Right.
We need to know that they've gone through the process first.
Okay.
That's the only way that, A, it's sustainable and it's also responsible.
Okay.
And so if they come and do a training, then yeah, am I answering that correctly, Carrie? You have to do a training, right?
It is on the website, and it's really available to the people that come through the training, but it's really just to make sure that all of our leaders are resourced, and we also have weekly coaching for all of the leaders that are representing in their local communities and coaching, and so it's a really well-sustained and resourced program so that we don't fling people out into the world without support. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, we're really trying to get people to think about social outreach and activism in a little bit of a different way. And so we want to be able to give them the skills. I mean, a lot of people want to go out there and serve, but they haven't dealt with their own wounds. And so they go into these environments, they get triggered, they try to fix something or change something because they don't want to deal with their own stuff. So we want to be able to support people that you're going to get triggered. And you've got to get really clear about when you do, not if you do, when you do, how to process it, how to deal with it, how not to project it. How to be in dialogue with someone else who's been triggered, that you're collaborating with, who's nuts. And you've got to find an interesting way to engage them without yourself getting triggered. So we work with nonviolent communication. There's a lot of stuff that comes up that we don't try to pretend that this is not happening. We know it happens. The best activists in the world we have lost because it wasn't sustainable and because they burnt out. And we want to be able to give the activists tools of sustainability through yoga and yogis tools of practicality so that they can actually, manifest something to completion. And so the trainings are very important so that we can help to support people in this process.
Seane, thank you very much for your seriousness. You do it well.
Thank you.
Great articulation, and I appreciate your focus on unity and the nonpartisan nature. And I'm not sure how to bring this partisanship into it because it's an obvious thing. I think if you look at the two parties, who you would think would be aligned. More
Me personally?
With the yoga community.
Mm-hmm.
No, for myself, I do. And somebody up front mentioned going to these politicians, and I think it's a different model whether you're looking for the yoga community to go and lobby politicians or looking for them, as you call us, a yoga constituency, and having them come to us.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at those two different, which direction it's heading, may help focus resources. And I think that then brings in a partisan issue. You gave a great example of going onto the streets of New York City and making it nonpartisan and unity. But if you look at the long direction in an election, who is going to be, which of the politicians and from which party will be coming to you and actually lobbying this constituency? And there's a reality of the differences between the parties.
But my guess is that if there's that much power in this community, and the politicians, regardless of where they stand on the in their parties, they're going to be interested in us regardless, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's not going to matter. They're perhaps going to alter some of their viewpoints to be able to serve the vote. I'm not suggesting that's a healthy thing. I mean, to compromise or whatever your own values are to get our votes, but it happens every single day. So I'd like to be in that running. But as far as who I think stands more closely aligned with the values of yoga, I could never put that out there publicly, nor would I. On a personal level, I mean, it wouldn't be appropriate for me to do this because my interest is in not making the yoga community feel as if who they're invested in, if it's different than whom I'm invested in, then I'm going to in any way perceive them as bad or un-yogic or wrong. And that's not my interest in this conversation, is to create more separation. I'm very aware of how quickly people can perceive this as a personal agenda and that I'm trying to manipulate an agenda. And I want to be very clear that that is so not my intention. So during the next, during this election, I won't be speaking personally at all who I'm invested in. I want just people going out there and making that decision for themselves and paying attention and deciding for themselves who comes more towards us, which politicians stand in those values. But I just know that I need to be very careful about that because I want to make this movement inclusive. And this was a conversation that we had in-house. Did we want to go partisan and really commit to that? Or did we want to make this a nonpartisan effort? And we had to decide within the community, must be nonpartisan. Because of the work that Off the Mat Into the World is committed to, which is inclusivity and non-separation, we cannot begin to take this kind of a stand and be divisive, no matter what we might feel personally. And you know what? So I appreciate you asking that question, but again, I can't really answer the question, which is the politician in me. But I have to be very delicate about that personally, and I think you all understand why, right? And understand the importance of making this something where people feel that no matter who they're voting for, I want them to come to me and tell me why they love one politician over another and not feel that I'm going to give them an argument. Like, I want to just be able to hold the space for them and just listen and in my own body breathe, stay grounded, and not be reactive. And perhaps give them some information related to the, well, no, I wouldn't even do that. I would just be present and listen. This is about getting people to the polls and people a part of the conversation. And that's the best we can do. And that's what I'm hoping that we can do. Did that answer that? All right. I always like to make sure I'm answering the question because I can go off on tangents. I got one more. Anyone else? Yeah, you're okay? Oh, we got a question.
I really appreciate, again, what we were saying, what you're doing, all the efforts, the seriousness. I believe there's a lot of beauty in it for sure. A concern, I guess you could say, would be politicians, yes, they have their lobbyists and they satisfy, if you will, certain needs of the community, of the contingent, of whatever it may be, and of the particular group or activists. And I feel like my concern would be that to, yes, satisfy certain things, but to not really, do you know what I mean? Like,
not mean it?
Explode it into a global thing. Do you know what I mean? Like on a local level maybe, but whatever type of policies we may be looking for and sort of satisfying it on like a surface level, but not really not catering to the community, but getting really deep and involved. Like, I feel like politicians sometimes do things to satisfy, but not really.
Perhaps. I'm okay with that.
Really, like,
I'm okay with satisfaction for now. But I'm also okay with the yoga community holding our leaders accountable and responsible. And that's up to us as citizens. It's not to keep giving our power over to our leaders and expecting them to be different. Why? We have to be different. We have to change. We have to get involved. We have to become a voice. Go and run for office in your own local town and make sure that you're a part of this conversation on a bigger scale. Because odds are, yeah, it will be surface. But if more and more of us are holding them accountable and they're realizing that we're taking ourselves very seriously in this, it's going to have to begin to deepen itself more and more and more. And so that's what I'm hopeful for at best. Again, it's like I said before, I don't know what happens if we engage, but I do know what happens if we don't. And that's not a game I'm willing to play anymore. And so let's go out there and take a risk and get involved and see what happens. And also not just make our vote and then kind of turn our back away, but to pay attention to who these people are and what they're doing and find other ways of engagement. One of the things that, I don't talk about this publicly and I'm not going to name names, but over the years, including recently, I've taught yoga to people at very high levels within our political system, very high levels, short of the presidency, although I'm working on that one. But people who have direct influence, they're doing yoga, on both sides. I have taught yoga to Republicans, and I have taught yoga to Democrats. And I've met their families, and I have connected with them on a different level. And when I see that happening, and I know that these are the people that are actually influencing high-level decision-making, my heart starts to beat a little bit. It's that idea that something else is happening here. It's way bigger than any one of us that we must be a part of, though. We must be a part of. And so if it means me going in and just teaching a little stretching, I don't go in there and try to tell them. I'm not going like, hey, I'm doing yoga votes and tossing that onto their lap. That's not my job. I'm there to teach them yoga and to hold a safe space for them so they can go back into their office and be perhaps a little bit more mindful, a little bit more connected. This is how we make change. And so when I get invited to do some of these things, no matter how busy I am in my life, I say yes, because this is what we have to do. And so it requires you not being willing any longer to sit back and let our politicians run the show, but to find a way to engage. Again, on a local level, you're not going to have a strong influence on a national level yet, but on a local level, you can. It's the local that's going to impact the state, which is going to impact the nation. So these are the ways in which I try to think. Otherwise, I get burnt out and I get really hopeless. I get that attitude, well, nothing's going to change. I can't do anything, so the hell with it. And then I feel that I have to hold myself accountable for that level of disengagement because now I've just taken myself out of the process. I've lost the power of an opinion when I do this. When you don't vote, I really feel like I lose my opinion. And especially when I think of all the people in the world that would kill for that opinion or have been killed because of an opinion, I feel that I serve them by exercising my civic right and duty to get out into my environment and try to make a difference. And even if it's just punching into the polls and making my little X mark, I feel like I've at least participated a little bit.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you so much, and I really want to encourage you to text 56512 and write vote. Or go to our website and pledge to vote and tell your friends. Find Carrie and Jessica and Davian in the back. We got a ton of information. Tonight, Majora Carter and myself and MC Yogi are going to do a benefit rally, dance party, yoga thing to hopefully raise even more awareness around this and talk to all the people in the back about ways in which you can get involved because this effort is reliant on you, not on me, not on Off the Mat, but on you. So again, thank you all very much. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you.